welcome to our deep dive, everyone. This one is all about the future of learning and how we're going to learn throughout our lives. You know, not just in classrooms,
Right.
but everywhere, really online, just in life.
Yeah.
Our source material today is this fascinating chapter from a book all about instructional design. And
It really gets you thinking.
it does, it really does,
Yeah.
about whether the way we traditionally approach learning
Yeah, like, is it even...
is even still effective?
Yeah,
Like, I don't know, in our world today,
right.
you know?
Yeah, I mean, the chapter, it really dives into those limitations of, like, the classic instructional design model, you know, where you start with a learning objective, you
Right.
break it down into all these little steps,
Yeah.
and then you guide the learners along, like, on a set path.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder if that's still relevant today
Yeah, like,
with, like, all the information we have access to.
constantly, like bombarded. If I wanted to learn to code,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not picking up a textbook anymore. I'm on YouTube.
Exactly.
I'm checking out forums. Maybe I'm doing a coding boot camp.
Exactly. And that's where the traditional model, it kind of falls apart a bit.
Right.
You know, it's focusing on these individual events. And it doesn't account for how all those learning experiences connect.
Right. Yeah.
And just like the sheer volume of learning that happens outside of those formal settings.
So how do we adapt?
Right.
Like, what does the future even look like?
Yeah. So the chapter actually lays out these 8 key principles for designing learning experiences for this new world. And one that I think is really interesting for us to talk about is the idea of like connecting diverse learning experiences.
I like that. Yeah.
Recognizing that learning happens in all these different contexts and time frames, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
At work, in online communities, even through your hobbies.
Yeah. And like those random moments.
Those are the best.
Right. Like they seem random, but they're like the most memorable learning.
Totally.
Like, I don't know, you stumble upon something new when you're researching something else totally different.
Yeah, those are great. And, you know,
Yeah.
instructional designers, we need to find ways to weave all those experiences together.
Right. Yeah.
Into like a more holistic picture.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah.
So another key principle is this idea of considering learning that happens in like the spaces in between.
Spaces in between, yeah.
What does that even mean?
So think about it.
Okay.
You're learning something new. Maybe you're taking a class.
Right.
You're reading articles, watching videos. But what about the moments outside of those activities?
Oh.
Right?
Okay.
You make a mistake at work and you learn from it.
Right.
Have a conversation with a friend.
Oh, yeah.
That sparks a new idea. You observe something in your daily life that shifts your perspective. Those are those spaces in between.
Right. Yeah.
And they're so often overlooked.
It is like we just compartmentalize learning.
We do when it's actually happening all around us all the time.
And that's where those connections are.
It is, yeah.
So how do we bridge those gaps?
So I think the first step is just like being aware of those moments.
Okay.
And recognizing their value.
Yeah.
Right? But we can be more proactive too. Like reflect on those experiences, jot down some thoughts, observations, talk to others about what you're learning.
Right.
It's about connecting those dots, integrating the insights.
It's like shifting from passive absorption
It is.
to actually engaging with the world
Yeah.
around you.
Cultivating a mindset
Yeah.
of curiosity and continuous learning.
That's good. That makes a lot of sense. But connecting all these pieces
Yeah.
sounds complex.
It can be.
How do you actually design for like meaningful learning in this kind of environment?
Yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah.
And the chapter, it outlines these 5 key principles
Okay.
to create meaningful learning experiences.
Okay.
Cooperative, authentic, constructive, intentional, and active.
Okay. Those are good.
Yeah.
So cooperative learning.
So that one emphasizes collaboration and dialogue, not just between the learner and instructor, but between all the learners.
Right. Yeah.
So fostering this like shared meaning making.
Makes sense.
And understanding that knowledge is constructed through all those interactions. And dialogue.
Yeah. I learn so much more when I'm bouncing ideas off others.
Right.
Than just like, you know, passively reading or watching.
Absolutely. So authentic.
Yeah. So that's all about grounding the learning in those real world contexts.
Oh, okay.
So not just abstract theory, but like, how do we make it relevant?
Right. To learners' lives and their experiences.
So less textbook theory.
Less of that.
More like hands-on application.
Yeah. And that actually ties in really well.
Oh, okay.
With the next one. constructive learning.
Okay.
It's not about memorizing facts.
Right.
It's about challenging them to be participants
Okay.
in building their own understanding.
Yeah, I like that. Like
Yeah.
grappling with those ideas, questioning assumptions,
Yeah.
forming your own conclusions.
Which is like what you're doing right here, right?
Yeah, encouraging you to think critically about the content and draw your own conclusion.
And then
Active learning.
active learning.
Yeah.
So that one's all about getting them involved in those hands-on activities, real-world problem solving.
Right. Okay, so put it into practice.
Exactly.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And then the last one,
Oh, yeah.
intentional learning.
Yes, intentional learning. Tell me more about that.
So that one is all about encouraging those learners to be goal-oriented and self-reflective,
Okay.
understanding their own learning process, taking ownership of their development.
So help them become more aware of how they learn, what they want to achieve.
Exactly. Empower them to take charge.
Makes sense. And the chapter actually uses a really interesting example
Oh, yeah.
to show how this is applied.
Cool.
EMT training.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it looks at how those training programs could be redesigned for more meaningful learning.
That makes sense.
So tell me more about that.
So the EMT training example, it highlights how strategies like scaffolding, modeling, and coaching can be used to create a more comprehensive experience. So scaffolding, for example, it involves providing learners with support that gradually fades as they progress through their training.
Oh,
it's like training wheels for learning.
I like that, yeah.
So
you wouldn't just throw somebody on a bike without training wheels.
You got to provide that support until they're ready.
Yeah, exactly.
And then there's modeling and explaining where the instructors actually demonstrate the skills and they make their thinking process visible.
Oh, okay.
So they're not just telling the learners what to do, they're showing them and explaining the why behind it.
Show, don't tell.
Exactly.
Good approach.
Right.
What about coaching?
Yeah, so coaching is about providing that ongoing support and guidance as learners apply their knowledge in real-world situations, helping them navigate those scenarios, make those tough decisions, and reflect on what they've learned.
Okay, so this coaching isn't just for the formal training.
It's not, no.
Yeah, interesting.
It can actually continue throughout an EMT's whole career.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's really interesting.
Emphasizes the importance of lifelong learning and development. Imagine a senior EMT guiding a newer colleague through something, sharing their experience, helping them make those decisions.
So it's about creating this learning community where everyone is committed to growth. It's more than just acquiring knowledge. It's about fostering a growth mindset.
Exactly.
Creating that supportive environment.
And while the example focuses on EMT training, this can be applied to so many other fields. Right?
Yeah.
It's about reimagining how we approach learning and development.
I like that.
In formal settings and in everyday life.
That's good.
Yeah.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the future of instructional strategies. It's fascinating how these ideas can be adapted to different fields and contexts,
It really is.
Like last time, we were talking about EMT training as like a really good example of how these strategies can be put into action.
Yeah, and it shifts away from that, instructor-centered model to one that empowers the learners.
Yeah, like moving from that sage on the stage to a guide on the side.
Exactly, and that's really important now with learning being so continuous and happening in all these different contexts.
So how do we make sure that learners develop those skills and the self-awareness to navigate all of this? Right. Because it's so easy to feel overwhelmed with all this information coming at us from every direction.
And that's where those principles of meaningful learning come into play.
Oh, right.
The 5 we talked about.
Okay, yeah.
Cooperative, authentic, constructive.
Yeah, okay.
Intentional and active.
Right, those were really insightful.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering, how do they actually translate into practice?
Yeah, so let's take cooperative learning. So instead of just, having those learners passively listen to lectures, we create those opportunities for them to work together. On projects, have those discussions, learn from each other's perspectives.
So more group work.
More of that.
Collaboration, peer learning.
Exactly, and those are such valuable skills.
Yeah.
Especially in the workplace today.
It would definitely make things more engaging.
Right.
Than just passively absorbing.
And it helps them develop a sense of ownership.
Right, yeah.
Over their learning.
So what about authenticity?
Yes.
How do we make those learning experiences more relevant?
Yeah, so think about incorporating things like case studies, simulations, real-world projects. That way they're actually applying their knowledge in a setting rather than just memorizing facts.
Oh, I really like that idea.
Yeah.
And I imagine it would be helpful to bring in guest speakers, too.
Absolutely.
Industry experts, mentors.
Yeah, those real-world experiences bridge that gap between theory and practice.
Right, exactly. And it kind of brings us back to those spaces in between.
It does.
You were talking about before. Like, it's so easy to compartmentalize.
Yeah.
But it's happening all around us.
It is.
All the time. So how do we make the most of those moments?
Well, I think it starts with awareness. We need to help those learners recognize that learning isn't just in classrooms or courses. It's happening in our everyday experiences.
So encouraging them to be more mindful.
More mindful.
Look for those moments, even when they're unexpected.
Exactly.
So what about giving them tools to capture those insights?
Yeah. So think about things like journaling. Reflection exercises. Having conversations with colleagues. Mentors about what they're learning outside those formal settings.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And that seems to really tie into that intentional learning, like helping them become more self-directed on their learning journey.
Yeah, and we can support that by giving them more flexibility and choice in how they learn.
So move away from
those
rigid structures.
Curricula.
Yeah.
Let them personalize their learning.
Based on what they're interested in.
Their interests, yeah.
What your goals are.
Recognize that there's not just one right way to learn.
This is all sounding very promising.
Yeah.
But it brings up a question for me.
Okay.
How do we measure learning with this approach?
That's a great question.
Yeah, because traditional tests, they don't seem like they would really capture this.
No, they often fall short. Yeah. And trying to capture those nuanced and multifaceted aspects of learning.
It's like you're trying to measure the ocean with a ruler.
Exactly.
It's just not going to give you the whole picture.
So we need to develop new methods that are more authentic, holistic, align with the goals of meaningful learning.
So instead of focusing on knowledge recall, we need to assess things like critical thinking, problem solving, creativity, collaboration. So things like portfolios, performance-based assessments.
Those are all great.
Peer evaluation.
That give you a more well-rounded perspective.
And those are skills that are so valuable in the world today.
Absolutely.
And as we develop these new methods, it's important to involve the learners, right? Get their feedback on what they think they're learning best.
Absolutely.
How they think it should be assessed.
Yeah, create a more learner-centered approach. Where they have a voice.
This has been such a great conversation.
It has.
It's clear that the way we approach learning is changing.
Yeah.
But before we move on, I want to go back to something you said about connecting learning across levels of abstraction.
Yes.
Can you remind us what that means?
Yeah, so connecting learning across levels of abstraction. It's about helping those learners see those connections between the different levels of knowledge. And understanding.
So not just the what.
The what, the why.
Yeah, the how.
Well, how it all fits together.
Exactly. Integrate that knowledge. Make those connections between concepts, principles, instead of just those isolated facts.
Yeah, I can see how that leads to a much deeper understanding. It helps learners see the relevance of what they're learning.
Absolutely.
So it sounds like a lot falls on the instructor to guide them, but is there a way to empower those learners?
There is.
To do that themselves.
We can teach them metacognitive strategies. Like self-questioning, summarizing, reflecting on their learning. These strategies help them become more aware of their own thinking processes.
Right. So give them the tools.
The tools,
to connect those dots.
To become more independent.
It's amazing to think about how these principles can really change the way we approach things.
Yeah, it's not just about acquiring information.
Right.
It's about developing that mindset of curiosity.
Yeah.
A love of learning. And the ability to connect ideas, think critically.
Exactly.
This has been such an inspiring conversation. But for now, I think we need to take a short break. Give our listeners a chance to absorb all of this.
Yeah.
We'll be back soon with the final part
of
our deep dive into the future of instructional strategies.
Looking forward to it.
Stay tuned. even like ventured into those spaces in between where unexpected learning happens. So now let's see how it all connects to your own learning journey.
Yeah, we've discussed so many strategies.
It's a lot.
It's a whole toolkit. Yeah. Scaffolding, modeling, coaching, collaboration, authentic learning experiences.
It might seem overwhelming.
Yeah.
But it's like...
It's when those strategies all work together.
Right.
Yeah.
That the real magic happens.
So we shouldn't be trying to pick just one, like our favorite.
It's about weaving them all together.
It's like an orchestra.
It is.
Each instrument has its own sound.
Right.
But when they harmonize, they make a symphony.
Exactly.
So how do we orchestrate this symphony?
Well, I think it all starts with a mindset shift.
Okay.
Moving away from that idea that learning is just passively absorbing information.
Right.
It's about embracing learning as an active, collaborative process.
So instead of learners being empty vessels waiting to be filled, they're individuals with their own experiences.
Exactly.
Introspective.
Ready to engage, explore.
So create those sparks of curiosity.
Yes.
Empower them to take ownership.
Give them the tools.
And provide that support.
Yes.
And guidance.
Especially in today's world.
Right. With everything changing so fast, they need to be adaptable,
resilient,
and comfortable learning on the fly.
Exactly. And speaking of change
and
adaptation, we can't forget about technology.
Oh, that's true. We haven't even talked about that.
No.
How is technology changing the game here?
Well, it's becoming more and more vital in creating personalized, engaging, and accessible learning experiences.
So like online platforms, virtual reality simulations, even those AI-powered tutors.
All of that.
It's exciting.
It is.
But also a little scary.
Yeah, there are definitely challenges.
How do we ensure that it's being used effectively and ethically?
Right. We need to be mindful of things like data privacy, accessibility, and the potential for bias in algorithms.
That's a good point.
Using technology responsibly, thoughtfully, always with the learner in mind.
And making sure it doesn't replace those human connections that are so important.
Absolutely.
So it's about finding that balance.
Yeah, that synergy.
Between the human touch and the power of technology.
Exactly.
This has been such a great conversation.
It has.
I'm feeling both excited and a little overwhelmed.
I understand that.
Like the future of learning is full of possibility, but it's up to us to shape it.
Yeah.
So what's the one thing you want our listeners to take away today?
I hope they'll remember that learning is a lifelong journey.
Okay.
It's never too late to embrace those new ideas, explore those possibilities, connect with others who share that passion for growth.
That's really well said.
Thank you.
And on that note, we'll leave you with one final thought.
Okay.
How will you apply these principles to your own personal and professional development?
Right.
Learning isn't just in classrooms or textbooks.
It's happening all around us.
All the time.
Exactly.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
Thanks for having me.
Until next time, keep learning, keep growing.
Keep connecting those dots.
And keep diving deep.